The first concept that we need to talk about in terms of Sabaki is going to be the concept of aji versus aji keshi. Now, what do these two terms mean? The literal translation for aji is taste. What it means in Go, however, is some kind of lurking potential to make something happen. Take, for example, this corner. Currently, there are 4 black stones to 1 white stone. All hope might seem lost for white here. However, there is something white can do. For example, if white simply starts by attaching, which we'll get into later in this video, there's a very special thing with attachments in Sabaki. White can make some interesting magic happen in the corner. Black can hane. White can double hane, looking to sacrifice some stones. And if black happens to capture the single stone in the corner, for example like this, then all of a sudden white has a myriad of other forcing moves. And this is the main concept of aji. They're forcing moves that coalesce into something greater than themselves, greater than the sum of their parts, and they don't eliminate potential from the position, they increase the potential in the position. So white has a cut, for example, here. There's a knight's move that can be cut here. There's a knight's move that can be cut here. And combined with any number of resources on the outside, white can get a lot of additional value out of these stones. The antithesis of Sabaki would be aji keshi. These are going to be moves that remove aji from a position, aka the bad forcing moves. So for example, if we replay out the same structure here, if white was to try to start by, let's say, forcing from the outside, threatening to cut, black could double down to kill the 1 stone. And even if white tries to come in with something like this, of course this is not really working, black gets to tidy up the entire corner for free. Now if white tries to do anything meaningful here, black is strong enough that black can simply resist with an extension and deny white any future in the corner at all. When we're doing Sabaki in our opponent's strong area, we want to make sure that we avoid situations like this, forcing moves that seem, oh, this is a sente, but in reality they're just helping the opponent fix the shape. Remember, with aji, these forcing moves should be producing future forcing moves within the position, not eliminating them. The second key concept that we need to know in order to have an effective Sabaki is the concept of light stones versus heavy stones. Take this example. In this position, white has 3 stones inside an already saturated and strong black area. Black has just kicked this white stone in the corner. How should white respond? I'm sure a lot of you would be looking at this kick and suggesting, oh, it's so simple, white should extend. However, we need to be careful in situations like this when the enemy is so strong nearby. Although extending can't necessarily be a mistake, it can be bad for the purpose of Sabaki because it leads to something called heavy shape. For example, if black simply blocks, and white pushes, and black extends, white is connecting out via a solid line here. However, white doesn't have any eye space yet to speak of. And it's still possible for black to surround the entire group from the outside. Something like this can become very difficult. White is going to have to spend many moves to try to save the whole thing now. This is usually what we don't want to see when attempting Sabaki. So, how do we remedy this? Some of you may have already guessed it, but a good answer here for white is the 1-space jump. The 1-space jump would be following the theme of playing lightly, which is the key to good Sabaki. This move does not attempt to save the 1 stone that's being kicked directly. If black really wants that stone, he can continue removing liberties to take it. White is simply stabilizing the whole structure in preparation to move away. For example, if black tries to wedge, going after the single stone, black creates an empty triangle in the corner, and white's whole group here is still relatively light. At this point, white can get ahead of it with a 1-space jump again, and even if black cuts, because white has already over-concentrated and turned black into a bad shape here, white can simply give away any 1 stone to maintain the integrity of the entire group. What we can see here is a basic situation that may happen, where white gets to come out and escape the black surrounding. This brings us to our third concept that we need to know for Sabaki, and this is perhaps one of the most important ones: a willingness to trade, aka don't be afraid to sacrifice your stones, people. Let's take this position for example. We've had a relatively normal Fuseki. White's taken territory here. White has a framework on the bottom. Black has a relatively stable center-facing group on the left that can come down, and a relatively strong corner. The last place where the opening can really happen on this board is going to be the right side and or the upper right corner. And one common move that white might do is an attach. Of course, we have a proverb we'll get into in our next lesson. Sabaki begins with attachment, and this is certainly following that principle for white. It's very common. Black can answer by defending the corner. White hanes, and this is the first indicator that white is looking to sacrifice something. Why doesn't white extend? If we refer back to our previous example, extending creates a connected shape that becomes very heavy. When black pushes, white doesn't have any base or eye space, and white has to keep adding stones to the structure in a very narrow and linear way in order to get to safety, providing very little value, while black gets to collect all the yummy territory. So instead, we step down, offering the initial stone to black. Should black decide to accept the sacrifice, black may cut. And this gets into a whole variation where white can choose to run the stone out, among other things. But let's say black doesn't take the initial sacrifice and instead black plays Atari. White may connect to protect the stone. This is not an indication that white is going to save the 3 stones, simply that by connecting the stone, we leave a weakness in our opponent's shape, keshi, that we can use. Black may extend, thinking that this effectively removes the threat. However, because we have a trading mindset, we can choose to cut anyway. And this is white employing another powerful sacrifice strategy. If white Ataris this way into the corner, then white has the ability now to push along the outside. And this stone creates problems inside black's area. White doesn't necessarily intend to save it, only to use it if black makes a mistake. However, in a position like this, white can give that stone away and settle quite easily. But what if black plays something a little more aggressive? Let's say black turns instead. Well, in this situation, we're still pretty good with that stone. We save our 3 stones by jumping. This makes a good shape. And black has to step back to finish capturing that 1 stone, giving white the time to fly away to the edge. Because white has a mindset and a willingness to trade here, white can employ all 3 of the key concepts that we've talked about in this first lesson. Starting with the attachment, white created keshi. Using these keshi, white was able to exploit the aji of black's ogema in the corner. By playing double hane, white maintained light shape, not falling into the trap of playing extension and becoming heavy. And using the third concept, a willingness to trade, white was able to effectively sacrifice 1 stone in the corner to create stability on the side.
By the way, you can also watch these lessons on our platform, gomagic.org. Except there, you'll watch them with interactive quizzes right within the lessons and practical exercises right after them. And if you enjoy watching these Go videos and you don't want to miss others like this one, go smash that like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and this is Go Magic.